Good day, everyone, and welcome to the Sisters Keeper podcast, where we discuss how having a core group of women surrounding you as you navigate some of the important moments of your life's journey is vitally important for all women. I am Dr. C. I am your host. And for this episode, I have the extreme pleasure of having Miss Debbie of the Tribe of Purpose with me today. Good evening, Miss Debbie. How are you doing?
I'm doing well, Dr. C. Thank you for asking.
Welcome to the Sisters Keeper podcast. And the basis for this podcast is to discuss issues that are vitally important to women. And today we are going to discuss domestic violence, which we know is vitally important to women who are victims of domestic violence, and also for their family and their friends who may be alongside of them. So let me begin with my very first question. For the purposes of the viewers who may not be well versed in domestic violence, can you explain what it is and the various forms that domestic violence takes?
Yes, I can. First and foremost, I want to share what domestic violence is and what it is not, because sometimes we get confused on exactly what is domestic violence. Domestic violence is a violent crime, it's violent situation, abuse that is committed by a person who's in a relationship with either a male or female, because it could go both ways.
Okay.
Sometimes the victim domestic violence is a cycle. And when that cycle is interrupted, or the people who's involved in the cycle concerning domestic violence, they're not sure of whether they're in it or if they want to get out of it or the direction that they should go. And so they feel vulnerable, whether you're male or female, it goes both ways. And so we're coming with domestic violence could be because of the fact of drug use, because of unemployment, because of insecurity, because of it's an array of things that goes up under the umbrella of domestic violence. And we just have to learn on where we fit and where it falls in it. It could be because you have anger issue. It could be because it's a pattern of, where you went through the things that you've been through because you've seen your parents go through or a friend go through it. You may not even be a victim, but you know somebody that is a victim and is causing harm to them, which bring harm to you because it's someone that you love or even within yourself.
Okay, so you mentioned that it could stem from a variety of different things, whether it's our past experiences or something that we may be engaged in at the moment, and that both male and female can be victims of domestic violence, and it can be in different forms. But what exactly is domestic violence? When I think of domestic, I think of a relationship.
Domestic violence, it is abusive. It's a physical, it can be sexual, it can be emotional, it can be economical, psychological, it could be it can fall up under any of those environments. Domestic violence is something that when we hear the word violence, we're thinking, oh, someone that attacked, someone that hurt, someone that did something that's major to another person that is not wanted.
Okay.
And so therefore, go ahead.
Okay, so I understand violence, I understand abuse, but wouldn't domestic violence be situated in a particular context as some type of relationship? Is it for example, if a mother was to abuse her daughter, would that be domestic violence?
Yeah, it can be. And that's where, and that's the thing, because when we hear the word domestic violence, we automatically think a husband and a wife. We automatically assume boyfriend and girlfriend. That's what we think. But it could be where you are a parent and you're domestically abusing your daughter or your son. It's the umbrella is wide, it's a range where it's
Okay.
affecting people.
So it's different types of relationship, where violence has occurred or some unwanted act has occurred towards one of the people in that particular relationship.
Yes, it's a behavior that caused that influenced it though. Always remember it's a behavior. And that
Okay.
behavior is causing this violent act upon people.
Okay. So it stems from something and it's causing the person to react out toward another person,
Yes,
which
ma'am.
causes them harm.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, thank you. And can you share with us your personal experiences with domestic violence?
Yeah, I was a victim of domestic violence. I was married to my husband, and I experienced, because of the fact, and he did things to me in the home that wasn't comfortable, that wasn't rewarding, that wasn't nice. And even from the fact to he beat me, to the fact that he pulled the sawed-off shotgun on me, he drove me off the 17 freeway and left me for dead. I
Wow.
went through a lot of things, and it's like I seen my mother be abused. I saw that, firsthand, and I tried to like, oh, I wouldn't go through. I didn't want to be a victim. I ended up being a victim anyway, and because of what I went through, it appears to trigger on down to my daughter, and so she had to, go through domestic violence as well. And although I survived domestic violence, I'm a survivor. Unfortunately, I had a daughter. She wasn't able to survive it. She wasn't able to survive. And with that
Okay.
said, it's a topic, and the topic is challenging because on the 16th of January, my daughter was taken away from us at the hands of her ex-boyfriend through domestic violence. And as you know, the anniversary, it will be 8 years this year, on the 16th, coming up in January. And all I can share with the people and the viewers is that, when you see and recognize the signs of domestic violence, we need to understand what it is. We need to get ourselves in a position to get away, to make a plan to get away, and not share with the perpetrator on what you're doing. Because when we start allowing them to know what we're doing, then they're going to come up with a plan to stop it. So we have to be careful when we're dealing with a person that is not, in their right state of mind. We have
Right.
to handle each situation because every situation is different. With my situation, I was a survivor. I was able to get away. I divorced. I was able to just walk away from everything. I left it all: house, home, dog, cat, clothes. I left it all, because material things wasn't important to me. Unfortunately, when my daughter decided to, like, okay, this is enough, enough is enough, I can't do it and endure this anymore, that's when the person he came and he had other plans. He had
Mm-hmm.
other plans. And on that day of January 16, 2017, he decided to enter her home and end her life. He shot my daughter 8 times. I would tell people, she did try to escape but she thought maybe we can co-parent. Said it wasn't so. Everybody can't co-parent. She wanted to co-parent. He didn't want it. He wanted that control. And when they feel they losing that control, they're going to do something violent to try to get it back. And that's what happened in this situation.
Okay. Well, thank you so much for sharing the generations that your family has endured suffering through domestic violence. You said your mother was a victim of domestic violence. And so obviously you witnessed that.
Yes.
Okay, and then you yourself was a victim of domestic violence, and praise God, you were able to escape that situation and find safety and continue walking on. And then you
Yes.
mentioned, of course, your daughter who was a victim and her life succumbed to domestic violence. So let me
Yes.
ask you this. When you were in that situation with your husband, did your daughter witness any of the incidents between you and your husband?
Never.
Never. Okay.
Never.
So even though we see that your mother was a victim, you were a victim, and your daughter was a victim, do you see a correlation between the accounts? Or do you think it's just situational? It's just something that happened to all three of you? Or do you see a direct connection?
No, it was definitely a direct connection because although she did not see it, but she heard the stories.
Okay.
She heard the stories. It was like okay, a storytelling time. And when we
Hmm.
talk about the things that transpired and the things that went on in the home later, and when they became adults and teenagers into an adult, when they mom, I didn't know you went through that. Yes, I did. Where I had to they ask questions because they hear family members speak and talk, but I never shared until they began to ask questions.
Okay. And that was when she was an adult?
Yes.
Okay. So prior to that, you hadn't had any discussions with her about your own personal situation, but later in life, you did have conversations with her.
Yes.
Okay. And in relation to your daughter, what are some of the emotions that you experienced as you were navigating through that time after January 16, 2017, when you lost your daughter to the hands of domestic violence? What were some of the emotions you personally experienced and went through?
Oh, I went through. It was a withdrawal for me. I was always saddened. I couldn't. It was I was sad. I was cry. And when I think about her and the things that we used to share together and do together, it took me a lot of time to try to get from point A to point B to try to understand in my mind, why. I couldn't understand why. And I would just sit there. Couldn't really get back into society, what I should be doing and what I was going. I was a student at the time, and I stopped going to school for 4 years because of this situation.
Mm-hmm.
It prolonged my education because her and I was going to graduate together. It was going to be mother and daughter graduate. She was a student as well. We was going to graduate together. That never happened because of this situation, and that put a toll on me. It's like, and then emotionally, I had to, like take care of her babies because, she left behind three children. And so, and I didn't want them to grow up not knowing what love was, not knowing that they do, although their mom is not here, they do have someone in their life who, going to take care of them and who love them. And I, took that on. And so it's just like one step at a time, raising and starting a new family all over again. That's
Yeah,
challenging. It's challenging, and
absolutely.
so and I had to deal with it, like okay, I had to roll up my sleeves and do what I had to do. And that's why it's so
Absolutely.
important. I try to bring awareness to others so they can know the signs. Don't just stay there, make a plan and do what, because it affects us all. It affects us all. And it really affects your person, when you're going through something physically and mentally, because my mental capacity wasn't as strong as it used to be. People would look at me and they say, "Oh, you're so strong." No, I'm really not as strong as you think, but I have to deal with it. I didn't get the
Right.
opportunity to mourn the way I wanted to because I had to put on this here persona that I'm strong, I can handle this. No, but I had strong people in my life to help me with this, to endure, to give me the strength to hold up my arms when I felt like I didn't want to go on. I just want to share this though. One thing I never did, I never blamed God, and I did not give up on my faith.
Absolutely. Well, thank you for sharing that. And I certainly understand that this was a trying time, and that's just to put it in words. But nobody could ever understand what you were going through with the loss of your daughter, especially because it was compounded by the children that she left, and they needed to be in somebody's care. And so, thankfully, you were there and you were willing to open up your arms and your home to your grandchildren so they would not be left destitute. So I can understand at that same time, while you're in mourning, now your life has transitioned, your life has shifted, and now you have become a caregiver. And so that's one of the circumstances that arose as a result of your daughter's passing was the shifting of her children. Can you think of some other things that were a byproduct of losing your daughter? What other things transpired as a result?
Well, not only that, my health, because it's like, whereas, you have a tendency to worry. And
Hmm.
when you worry, that brings on things that you normally wouldn't carry. It's like a burden, and so my health, it took a turn. And with that saying, I'm now working on getting and developing and putting myself in a position, in a place where I can get back healthy and, eat healthy. I wasn't eating properly. I wasn't sleeping properly because I'm always worrying and wondering about, are they okay? Are they okay? What are their needs are? So, that took a big toll on me. I felt isolated, like
Hmm.
I can't, I can't go, I can't move, so it's an isolation period for me where I never got the opportunity to really let go and mourn. And so, because of the transitioning of me going through everything that I went through,
Hmm. That's a very important point because no matter what people are going through in life, if something tragic happens to them, it is shifting emotionally, mentally, and physically. And so, after that period of when you realize that your health was going down because your attention was elsewhere, it was no longer on yourself. What did you do to turn that situation around to make sure that you are healthy? Because you do need to be here not only for yourself, but for your grandchildren as well.
most definitely. I changed my eating habits. Instead of eating a dozen of donuts, I started eating one. So I
Okay.
had to reflect and adjust to, okay, what's good for you?
Right.
Either you're gonna be here or you're gonna be gone too.
Right.
So I started trying to eat, walk more. I didn't like exercise. I started drinking more water. I had to take a self inventory. And when I began to take self inventory and look on the inside,
Hmm.
and see what's going on, I started making changes for the good.
Absolutely. And that's so good to hear because sometimes when our attention has been shifted to something else, we lose sight of everything. And sometimes what we used to pay attention to or what we valued at that time in a different stage in our life may not be as important, so we think, but in essence, it really is all important. And we just have to take the time out to do that self reflection. And like you said, to look inside of yourself. Now, my next question is: have you been successful in dealing with the subsequent challenges that you have had to endure? So, since the time that your daughter has passed and taking on your grandchildren and looking at your health and coming out of isolation, are there any other challenges that came up as a result since that time that you've had to endure?
Well, I really truly believe that I've been successful in making the changes and adapting to new situations and new things that's going on in my life. I started back going to school, and I have key people in my life that has been very supportive. I started my organization, Tribe of Purpose, and the Tribe of Purpose started for, top TOP, which means that we're going to be on top of every situation as they occur, and we're going to help people not to go through what I had to endure and go through. Keep in mind, very important that I didn't probably share, going through this ordeal with my daughter, we had to live in a safe house. In that safe house, we're going from house to house. They put us up to protect us from the victim, because from the person, because he was still out there at large. So, we didn't have nowhere to go. I had to lean on to my sisters in Christ. I had to lean on to my tribe of purpose sister. I had to lean on to my family, and they was my biggest supporter. So through it all, everything I had to go through, I think that I am doing very well now with bringing the awareness, helping, because of the strength that women's and men's in my life has been my biggest supporters.
Okay. And when you say you had to go to a safe house, are you referring to you and your grandchildren?
Me and my grandchildren had to go and still live in a safe house for like almost 6 months.
Wow, because the threat was
Yes,
still
we was
out
on
in
the
the
run.
world.
We was like, it was like a movie, girl. We was on the run. Okay,
Wow.
it was scary. It was really scary because I would go in the grocery store, be shopping. Somebody come and say hi. I'm turning, jumping. It wasn't a pretty sight, and nobody knew the things that I was going through because I didn't share. So I
Mhm.
tried to, like hide them and make people think everything's okay. And when it wasn't really okay until like now, the latter years going forward, now it's been 8 years coming up. And I tell you, the first 5 years was hard.
Mm.
It was really extremely hard.
Okay. And you said there were people in your village that stood by you and supported you,
Yes, yes,
women in your church, tribe of purpose, and family members, I'm sure. So tell me
yes.
about that. What were some of the things that these women were able to do that could bring you comfort to let you know, even though you felt isolated and you felt that no one would understand because they hadn't been there, and also the fear that was surrounding the situation? What did these people in your village, the support system, what did they do to help you navigate through?
They would call me, we would pray together, we would go on outings together. They would keep me involved. They wouldn't let me just sit down and not do nothing. They were always inviting me to go somewhere. They would come by the house, bring groceries. They would come by the house, pick up loads and loads of clothes and just go wash them for me. They would, like, nope, you're getting up, you're going out. You're not going to just sit here, go on different things. They would not allow me just to give up and roll over and just, no, this is not going to happen. This is not you. You're not, no, no. So they kept me involved in things and kept me, when I felt like I wanted to give up, they were like, no, it's something always transpire where it would give me that little extra nudge to just move forward. And they was very supportive, prayer warriors, always calling, checking on me. I just called to see how you doing, sis. I just want to make sure, do you need anything? Are you lacking anything? Always there. Very positive energy, positive energy. And if I needed someone
Absolutely,
to
and
talk
that's
to,
wonderful.
and if I needed someone to talk to, they would call and give me the words that I needed at
Mhm.
that moment, you know, and I appreciate each and every one. In fact, you are one of them, Dr. C. So I appreciate it.
Absolutely, I am a very strong believer in creating a village and
Mhm.
being my sister's keeper, which is
Yes.
what this podcast is all about, is that we may not understand the trials that someone else is going through. And it doesn't matter whether or not we have walked in their shoes, whether we have experienced it or not. God gives us compassion. And if we can have compassion one for another, then we can carry each other's load, we can carry each other's burden, and we can help lift up the arms of each other and help us to navigate through. So, as we close this interview, I want to ask you this final question. How do you think the time that you were going through your circumstance, and I understand that it's not completely over. I know that you're still raising your grandchildren and you're reflecting back, and you are now being an advocate for other victims, but how do you think your life would be if you did not have a tribe, if you did not have a village, if you did not have a sisterhood surrounding you, giving you that comfort, that encouragement, the peace that surpasses all understanding? How do you think things would be different?
Oh, I think I wouldn't have made it. I would not have made it. I can share that with you because if I wouldn't have had somebody there in my corner that I could go to and cry on their shoulder or share with them of what I was feeling at that moment and how, devastating, with the loss of my daughter and what the effect that he has done on me, if I wouldn't have had one of the sisters to talk to, that would have been devastating. because we need somebody. We all need somebody. And one thing I could truly say about a close sisterhood and the sisters that I interact with, beautiful. And you ain't got to worry about backbiting, back talking. That's just, you can feel that love. I mean, the love is so strong. It's like with a smile, you know that they love you. We always agree on everything? No, because if I'm doing something crazy, they're gonna correct me. If I'm doing something that's not, they're gonna correct me. But it's all in love, bringing it together so that I can continue to strive to be strong.
Amen. And that's what we do for one another. Like the word says, iron sharpens iron. And when
Yes,
we're weak, somebody else is strong and they can lift us up. And when they are weak, we are strong and we can lift them up. So
yes,
we have to always remember that people may not have had the same experience and maybe they don't completely understand, but they are there to keep us from being alone and going through whatever space we're trying to navigate at that moment. They are there to assist us. They are there so we can find our joy again. The Lord said he would give us peace that surpasses all understanding. And he does it in so many ways. He performs miracles daily. And having a sisterhood is truly a miracle that God has granted. And I just thank you for what you're doing, even with the devastation that you experience, even with the tears you still cry today, even with the challenges that comes from raising three teenagers, you still stand strong in the midst of it. And I commend you for that. I commend you for the ministry that God has given you, Tribe of Purpose, because people just don't know. They don't know what it is when you're alone and you're crying and you're thinking, God, why? And what is going on? But you have provided an outlet for these women and for men as well, because, like you said, it is not respective of person. And so I just thank you, Miss Debbie, for all that you have done and all that you continue to do. And I want to let all of the viewers know that you can look up Tribe of Purpose, go to the website. And this ministry is a strong ministry that will hold you down. They will surround you with love, they will surround you with support. And this ministry is endeavoring to do more. And I pray that God's mercy and hand of grace will be upon the Tribe of Purpose as you endeavor to open up the safe house for men and women everywhere who are in need of an outlet, who are in need of a place to go. So, Miss Debbie, do you want to share any final words before we close out?
the only thing I would want to tell people is just learn the signs of domestic violence. Always know there is help. You're not in it alone, and it is not your fault.
Amen. Absolutely. And that's really important too, because people do look at what maybe they have done as a victim, as a person who is on the receiving end of the violence, but it's not that person. It's the person who is the perpetrator. And so those are really important words. And thank you for sharing that. And I thank you so much for sharing your time with the Sisters Keeper podcast. I pray that God will continue to bless you and your family and all that you do, not only for yourselves, but for others, and continue to share the love that God has placed in your heart for those who are in their times of need. God bless you and thank you again for coming.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for joining me for another episode of Sisters Keeper podcast. As we talked about the trials and the circumstances and the devastation of domestic violence. I pray that you will join me for the next episode of Sisters Keeper. I'll be right here, and I pray that you will be also. God bless you.